Welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast. You're in the right place if you're a growth-seeking being who acknowledges the challenges and delights of your humanity on the path to an ever more conscious life. If you want to feel inspired to love and accept yourself, to feel free to be and express you in all your brilliance, if you want to truly value yourself and others and feel energized and alive both at home and in the world, then sit back and take a breath as you explore and grow the brilliance of your beautiful human self with your host, the father of non-personal awareness and creator of the MPA process, Joel Young.
Hello, and welcome to the Be a Brilliant Human podcast with me, Joel Young. And did you like the new intro? If you listen to the first two episodes, I didn't have an intro, and I thought, I've said before in the previous episodes that this is kind of a big experiment, kind of some fun for me to do this podcast. And I thought it would be really fun to get a genuine voiceover artist to do an intro for me to sort of top the show, and also put it on the back of some music. And that is actually my music. I wrote that my very self. In case you don't know, I've got a background in music. When I was growing up, I always wanted to be a rock star, and came pretty close in my early and very wild years, touring with a band and those kind of things, and have for many years written all sorts of music. I'm basically a guitarist, singer-songwriter, but I also love a bit of dance stuff as well. So that's kind of a blend there of dance. And by the way, if you stay right to the end, I'm going to leave a full version of that. What you get with that intro is the backing music, but it's actually a full song. So I'll actually leave that at the end of this episode if you're curious to hear the whole song. It's called Simple, because the answer is always simple, right? But it was quite an interesting experience, actually. I decided to look on a thing called Fiverr. That's Fiverr with Fiverr.com, where you can get some amazing things done, like for very little money, really. And I was looking around, and there's so many different voiceover artists. Because I'm a fella, I thought I'd like to have a gal as to do the front end, balance out that yin and yang and all that. And I was looking around. I wanted them to be British because I'm British, and I found one that said they had a soft northern accent. I thought, well, that works for me because I'm a southern boy. If you're not in the UK, there's kind of a classic north-south thing, and there's different accents. So I'm basically raised in the south, but I live now in Skipton in North Yorkshire, which is up towards the very north of the country, at the foot of the beautiful Dales. And I thought it'd be nice then to have a nod to that with a soft northern accent. And she was lovely, actually. Her name's Amy. You can find her on Fiverr. Amy, I think she's Amy Voices is the way you'll find her. And I think she did a great job. But let me know, do you like it? Do you hate it? No. And so I got that yesterday and put the song on. And there you go. This is the first episode that's got that on. Bit of fun. And on the topic of this podcast, it's been so exciting, really, because did you know it's now available on 8 podcast platforms? That's right. I use Anchor FM as the main hub for this podcast, and it spreads it out to different places, which is kind of exciting, really. So right from the off, it was on Spotify. And of course, you can always listen on anchor.fm/JoelYoungMPA. But getting it on Spotify felt kind of cool. I don't know why it feels cool to be on Spotify. It just does. Maybe it's because my daughter's a big Spotify fan. Shout out to Stella, my just turned 23-year-old daughter. And I get a lot of my new music via her. She sort of sends, Dad, listen to this playlist I just made. So it kind of feels cool to be on Spotify. Then it's on Apple Podcasts, or iTunes as I think of it. And as a podcast listener, I mean, I listen to my podcasts that I do, not my own podcast. Well, I will now actually, but the podcast that I love to listen to, I generally go through Apple. I'm a Mac user, an iPhone, those kind of things. But also I know there's loads of people out there who, shock horror, don't use Apple products, and I get it. It's also on Google Podcasts now. It's on Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Casts, Radio Public, and in the works is for it to go out to Stitcher, which I gather is another big podcast platform, and Castbox. So wherever you're listening to this, and maybe it's already there on the Stitcher or Castbox by the time you get to hear this episode. But do go ahead and subscribe, leave a review wherever you are. It always helps to get this out to more people, which of course is fab for me, and I believe fab for everybody else too. The other thing that if you're listening on Anchor FM, you'll see there's a big button there that says message. Leave a message. And I really want to encourage that. And even if you're not listening on Anchor FM, there's an easy way to go and leave me a message. You just need to go again to anchor.fm/JoelYoungNPA/message, or just go to anchor.fm/JoelYoungNPA and you'll find the big message button there. And I love the idea that you can leave messages, because one of the things about that, it means that it can acknowledge that I really want you to be involved in this podcast, what we talk about, the topics we cover. So you can use the message. I mean, you can message me anyway. You can do the good old-fashioned email, joel@nonpersonalawareness.com. Get in touch with me via the social media platforms. But I'd love feedback. Feedback's always good. Please leave a review. 5 stars is lovely. But yeah, feedback from you is always good. Any questions you've got, you can ask me questions. Again, I spent a lot of time this week looking at content in terms of, what am I going to talk about on these podcasts? But the best thing is if you let me know what you would like me to talk about. Are there things going on in your life that you'd like to ask questions? Joel, is this stuff going on? How do I deal with it? Oh, I've got this conundrum. And what are your thoughts on it, Joel? You can just hit that message button or go to the message page at anchor.fm and you can leave me a message. And let me know, or if there's just sort of general topics you'd like me to cover. Joel, it'd be really interesting if you talk about this. I'd love to have your messages, so do go and do that. Again, it's anchor.fm. Just go to your browser, type it in the top, anchor.fm/JoelYoungNPA/message, and it will get you there. Okay, so come on, Joel, I hear you say, what are the 3 types of interaction? So, okay, first up, it is coming. So it's foundational, as I said. So I'm going to be relatively brief on each of these. I just want to really touch in with them because, again, they're going to be sort of, these aspects are going to feature throughout all of what I talk about. They're fundamental, as I say, to my view of the sort of one of the best ways to look at the universe, to look at our human experience. They're real keys, and these 3 types of interaction, you'll see when I get to them, is they're just absolutely threaded through everywhere you look in your life. There'll be these 3 types of interaction at play in some form, or certainly when we look at it in terms of human experience. Anyway, so we'll be coming back to them sort of throughout the whole thing. So let's just get on with it, Joel. Okay, so what's the first one? The first of 3 types of interaction is human interactions. That's obvious. Yeah, they're all kind of obvious. That's part of the deal. But let me talk about human interactions. So your human interactions are really key to your quality of life. I mean, even if you're an introvert, or an expressive, it doesn't really matter. In some form, we are constantly interacting with other human beings. So an aspect of really expressing and being in your authentic brilliance is going to be the interplay with other human beings. So this is like how we communicate with others, because it affects, there's that thing of the quality of your communication affects the quality of your response. It affects the quality of the influence you have. I'm not talking about controlling other people. I'm just talking about really showing up and mattering and making a difference to people. There's all sorts of influence. So in human interactions, there's sort of, again, 3 kind of fundamental parts to it. And in a sense, these 3 fundamental parts to the 3 types of interaction, they all are at play with the different interactions. So let's talk about it in terms of human interactions. The first part is sharing you, right? This is your expression. So talking, expressing, putting stuff out into the world. So if I was to give you a clue here as to my view on what are some great things to help you with sharing you, again, dropping the mask means you're more available and more open, but generally, as human beings, we respond really well to warmth. We respond sort of using a tone that is welcoming and inviting. And we also tend to appreciate clarity. Now, clarity is something that I'm really big on. Again, I'm not perfect when it comes to clarity. Sometimes might listen back to my podcasts and go, "Oh, I could have said that more clearly." But generally, I'm a big fan of doing whatever I can to be really clear about what I'm about, where I stand. Things like boundaries. I think when it comes to sharing your boundaries is so important in this world, because your boundaries really are about setting what feels good and what doesn't, what works and what doesn't. And when you're clear, other people are clear, you all know where you stand, you can start to attract people that are a real fit for you in your life or in different contexts of your life. So that those things are really important. And again, coming up in the not too distant future, I'll be talking more about my Boundary Bootcamp course, which is an amazing course for looking at creating healthy boundaries. But we'll get to that. I just dropped that in off script, so to speak. So when you're sharing another really key thing is coming from a place of inner confidence. I mean, inner confidence may take work, but really the more you're congruent in yourself, your communications outwardly tend to follow that. So in terms of human interactions and sharing just generally being warm, inviting, confident in yourself. Honesty is really a big deal. And I'll probably do an episode on honesty versus privacy, because there's distinctions there. But that's really, really important. The other aspect is receiving them. So sharing receiving them. So this is in the realm of listening, really. Being available. Again, listening is a auditory term, so it's about sort of hearing, but it's not just hearing with your ears. It's receiving them energetically, receiving them visually, having a sort of that's hard to say, isn't it? Sensory acuity about what's coming your way from other humans. Again, generally, I encourage empathy and understanding. Also, a lack of agenda is a really core thing, which I'm sure we're going to come back to on this podcast at some point. But really, listening without an agenda is such a powerful thing. I mean, I don't know if you've ever had the experience of someone listening, you've got stuff going on, you're sharing it, and they've got an agenda about needing to fix you, or they think they know what's right for you. It's like, come on. Whereas someone who'll just hear you, just listen. I mean, a huge part of when I share and teach MPA, it's really an agendaless way. And certainly in terms of my private practice with clients and how I operate when I'm sharing in a room, I absolutely come from that agendaless place. I say, my sessions, I don't have an agenda in my session. Yeah, you've paid me money, a good amount of money, and you've probably got an idea of what you want to improve or fix. But when you get out of the way, you'll find that the most natural route and your intentions kick in, and we can find a really graceful way to travel together to where the energy is taking you. Now, so that doesn't exclude stuff being, shifted and changed and transformed along the way, but it's different to coming with an agenda of, I am the expert and I know what you need. Or even your mind is the expert of you and you know what you need. It's like, get out of the way. The agendalessness creates a situation where you can be frictionless in the forward movement, which tends to speed things up and even take you to places that you kind of you didn't even know you were going there, and yet it's so much better than you thought. How fantastic is that? So sharing you with warmth and in confidence, receiving them with empathy, understanding, sensory acuity, and agendalessness is really powerful. And the third aspect is action. So again, in human interactions, absolutely action is a huge part of it. You can talk, you're blue in the face, but the actions are really important. So what do I mean by that? Well, actions tend to follow the energy more than the words. So one of the things you'll probably notice when it comes to sort of really good human interactions is when someone's actions are congruent with their words. So they say they're going to do something and they do it. I mean, that just feels good, doesn't it? Or when they're speaking, somehow their body language matches their words, and you can feel that congruence. So actions is a really important aspect of all interactions in different ways, but certainly in human interactions. So really, that sweet spot for human interactions is where your spoken skills sort of are married with an inner congruence. A couple of things just to add on there, really. Again, speaking foundationally, and a really huge part of what I'm about and what we're going to be talking about on this podcast is that comes down to really working on the fact that you matter. So going from invisibility to standing your words in your power, that connectedness inside of you, so that your words can matter meaning coming into form. They have weight. They really connect with people, because that's an important part of really powerful and fulfilling human interactions. All right, so that's number one, human interactions. Number two, in seat number two, that reminds me of Blind Date. If you're in the UK, you'll understand the Blind Date reference. I'm sure it went worldwide, but when I was a kid growing up, Blind Date had Cilla Black, a Liverpudlian. And the voiceover will go in seat number two. It's Dandy Doran from Doncaster. Anyway, I digress. Right, number two, internal interactions. So what do I mean by internal interactions? Well, this is the place where you really marshal yourself. You know, you master yourself, really, because it's the dialogue, the interaction with yourself. So in a sense, you know, what you say to yourself affects that confidence and that congruence. And when I say again, what do you say to yourself? It's how you interact on every level with yourself. So those inner communications can either be your medicine or they can be your poison. And it's really good to be mindful about the nature of that inner dialogue. So again, dialogue, generally, there are ways that we talk with our inner voice or with our sort of mind voice to ourselves. If you stop and listen, you'll find there's probably many voices, he talks to himself with many voices going on. But we also communicate with ourselves through our feelings and through our identity. Again, in MPA, I talk about how identity, your beliefs and your feelings and your actions tend to follow your identity. If you've got the sort of the whole identity of I'm rubbish, for example, then generally the way you talk to yourself, the way you feel about yourself, and the way you act is going to reflect that identity. You know, I'm the rubbish person, so I'm going to tell myself I'm rubbish. I'm going to do rubbish things. That's generally how it goes. So those internal interactions are really key. Again, remember, you are a human. So when you talk to yourself, when you interact with yourself, use all of the stuff I just talked about with human interactions. Again, sweet spot is be congruent, be confident, be warm, be empathic, all of those things. If you can begin to train yourself to be that way with yourself, you're going to build trust in yourself. You're going to build, it's going to be a really wonderful growing spiral of wonderfulness as you go forward. And of course, internal interactions, it's the realm of self-inquiry and growth. So it's often through that internal dialogue. And again, we can do it so just by talking to ourselves. Journaling is a great way to do internal dialogue. Those kind of approaches are really good, you know, for clearing out your stuff. There's loads of ways to do that. So if I was to talk about what's the sweet spot with internal dialogue is being kind to you. It's again one of my core philosophies or core questions I have to myself is it kind to me? If you're kind to yourself, then that breeds kindness inside, and kindness which is truly authentic can go outwards to others. I even wrote a whole ebook on being kind to you, which you'll probably find on my website somewhere, but I think you can go to mpa4.me again /be kind 2 and then you, all lowercase, the letters. And now I've mentioned that, I'm going to have to stick that in the notes. So I will stick that with the other links in the notes around here somewhere. So again, inner interactions really is just sort of mental dialogue, speaking to yourself, communicating with yourself how you feel about yourself, who you think you are, those kind of things. And if I can encourage anything, it's to be congruent and be kind to you. Which brings us on to, I'm going back to blind date in my mind. See, my internal talking now is going, in seat number 3. The third one is intuitive interactions. That's interactions with your intuition, or your instincts. So you might say, well, isn't that the same as internal interactions, Joel? Well, it is a form of internal interaction, but it's, in a way, it's both, because there's internal, you've got external stimulus, which speaks to your intuition, and there's also the internal intuition of what your body or your being is saying to that. So I'm really looking more here in terms of intuitive interactions at how you relate to those deeper functions. So intuition and instinct are really deeper functions. The internal interactions are dealing with your kind of more mental level or more of that sort of surface level. But when you get down to intuition and instinct, you're kind of coming down into your belly, really, where these things can come up. So why is this important? Why is it important to have a distinction here? Well, as I said, it seems internal, but it's internal and external, because intuition really links the micro, the tiny, to the macro, the massive, the universal, the personal to the non-personal, the individual to the cosmic. There's a way that intuition and instinct links to that wider and yet somehow relevant personally experience, because there's always more going on than you can possibly see and possibly know. And this is where intuition and instinct really kick in. It's like there's this incomprehensible complexity, which is then condensed into an intuitive prompt or a knowing, a next natural step. And it's amazing that you don't really need to have all of the pieces of the jigsaw. You can rest in the not knowing of how it all is going to pan out or how it's all operating right now. But you have this beautiful skill, this sense of this intuitive faculty that can keep you on track if you pay attention to it and get good at knowing the difference and the distinction between what is genuine intuition and head trash. So I have to address the whole thing of that word, intuition. So, I mean, in MPA, I don't generally use the word intuition. I have a new word for it. In fact, in MPA, I've used lots of new words because some words carry a lot of dogma or baggage around them. And intuition is one of those things. I use the word animation. So in MPA, where I train you to notice the animation. Specifically in MPA, part of the process is you'll listen to an expression and you'll be looking for the animation, which is what pops out. It's an intuitive faculty. But if I say, tune into your intuition, ask your guides what is the right thing, then that's a whole different thing. And that may be how it kind of works for some people. But people can get really, really stressed out and lost up in the kind of new ideas of what guidance, what intuition is. They get stories about, oh, I'm not intuitive. Well, we're all intuitive. You've come into this world with genius apparatus for instinct and intuition. And sometimes that gets very highly developed with kind of ESP and, psychic phenomenon or just really sort of high intuitive faculty, which comes through relatively complex ways. But the most baseline thing for intuition is, you can feel, you can just tell, you can vibe it, it's there. I mean, if I was to say, really, what's my sort of biggest offering as to how to improve your relationship with your intuition is explore how it's already speaking to you, how it's already working. So because you'll find if you again ditch all the head trash about what it means to be intuitive and guidance and seeing auras and all those wonderful things, and come back to how is it speaking to you. Some people find that it is quite auditory, so they'll literally have a voice that they can recognize as the voice of their intuition, or they might see signs, or perhaps they have prophetic visions, or they just get a gut feeling, or they have a tingly wingly somewhere in their body, and they know it's that intuitive prompt. So if you stop and really pay attention, I mean, you can use historic things. When you know that your intuition was kicking off, or your instincts were calling you. What did that feel like? Where did it sit in your body? What was it? And if you get in tune with how it's already working really, really well and focus on that, what I've noticed with people over time that I've been working with is that faculty tends to grow. So and then can expand. So it start off as I just get a sense or a feeling, more of a sensory feelingy kind of thing, to full blown, the lights go on, I see angels, or whatever it is. But it can go if you start where you are, which if you listen back to episode 2, you'll find is a really key thing that I love to talk about. Okay, so also the other way that you can help improve your interaction with your intuition is to clear the dross. We tend to have, not only around the ideas of intuition, but we tend to have a lot of baggage around heeding our instincts and our intuition. I know I did. I've done a lot of work to come through an understanding of really heeding them. And for me, it's been there's been an intuitive faculty where there is a way I do sense energy and those kind of things. And then there's the instincts, which are an even deeper faculty. For me, that's been my experience. And I was raised in a household with a mum, love you mum, who, bless her heart, really gave me, let me really own this. I took the meaning from her expressions that my instincts were irrelevant. So there were experiences where, generally the conversation was around giving someone the benefit of the doubt. So there's me being basically bullied and being told, and my gut is going, get away, stand up for yourself. It's kicking off that way. And I'm being told, oh, it's not that bad, minimizing it. Which that taught me that, that those really sort of guttural animal instincts to basically either fight or flight, or basically this is not good, move elsewhere. I learned to ignore those, which throughout my life and definitely in relationships has got me staying in really unhealthy situations way beyond where my instincts are screaming. Fortunately, I feel a lot more at home and prepared to listen to my instincts, whatever the situation now. So that's something that I definitely encourage you to do. So really, when your sort of path of communication, your interactions with your instincts and your intuition gets really, really clear, what you have is a really grounded navigation system that will guide you very, very well. And you don't, as I said at the beginning, you don't need to have the big picture. You can just come in, and if you live your life in a space of connection to that knowing, then it's really wonderful and magic is going to happen. Alrighty then. So let's get into episode 3, which I've called Master These 3 Types of Interaction for Authentic Brilliance. And just to tell you that, again, a bit like last week, really, I wanted to do some sort of these first couple of episodes, or first 3 episodes, as sort of foundational ones, really, to give you a kind of a bird's eye view of some of the sort of core principles or the ways that I think, really, in terms of how I look at the universe, because these are themes that are going to come back again and again throughout as we cover more specific topics and life-based stuff and things that you can directly relate to. But I thought it's good to initially sort of set some foundation. So in a sense, today is going to be relatively sort of, again, bird's eye. What do they call it? Blue sky thinking or something. I don't even know what that means. Does anyone know what that means? That's a corporate thing. I don't do that so much. So it's going to be kind of fairly philosophical. I think it's good. I don't know if you feel this, but sometimes you can get into something and if it's not clear kind of where you're starting from, what the foundations are, you can feel a bit off. So I like to get things clear up front. This is where the base place from which we move from, and then we're all clear going forward. And also, I do love breaking things down into chunks. And that's, in a sense, what I'll be doing today. We're talking about 3 types of interaction. It's kind of chunking things down. So also, part of today's episode is we'll be talking a little bit about non-personal awareness and the MPA process. So I'm going to guess that a fair number of people will come to this podcast knowing me as the creator, custodian, or father of non-personal awareness, creator of the MPA process, and we'll have an idea what that is. If you don't, if you're wondering what the heck is MPA, I'll tell you straight up, the best way to get to know MPA is start with the process, the MPA process itself. And you can get that for free. You just need to go to mpa4.me/MPA sheet, and that'll take you to a page where you can just give me your email and I'll send you the sheet for free. By the way, NPA, sometimes people mishear it. That's November Papa Alpha, to use the official sort of phonic alphabet to go with it. So mpa4, the number 4.me/NPA sheet will get you to download the MPA process sheet for free. There's no better way to learn than by doing something and getting a sense of it. Non-personal awareness, which is what MPA stands for, is in a sense a way of looking at the world. It's a philosophy. It's a set of ideas and a new perspective, really, on how we, getting on to today's topic, how we relate to the universe. So let's go there, really. MPA is a relational model. And what that means is I view the universe in terms of relationship, how we relate to things. And I said today it's like, 3 types of interaction to master for authentic brilliance. So I suppose I ought to actually talk a bit about what I mean by authenticity. Now, this is a huge topic, which I imagine we'll cover in different episodes. But in a nutshell, it's like being real, being more real. It's about, classically people think of it in terms of dropping the masks. We all have these masks. My view, and we'll get to this in more detail very shortly, it's not about exactly dropping the mask. It's about noticing which masks work and which masks don't. And in a sense, whatever masks you've got on, because the truth is we all exist with the body, and the body is kind of a mask, and we all have a personality, and the personality is a form of a mask or an identity. So I'm all about being less invested in them, and so just getting out of your own way. When it comes to identities, it's about sort of holding your identities lightly, and that's a big piece of what the non-personal philosophy is. But today, really, I want to talk about the aspect where it's looking at the universe as a relational model. Now, why is this so cool? And trust me, it is very cool. Well, really, a lot of the way that I grew up I've been doing sort of personal growth, spirituality stuff for, it's going to be approaching the 30 years now. Oh my God. And a lot of the time I've spent in there was in the realm of where the ideas were that, to sum it up in a nutshell, was you had to kill the ego. You had to rid yourself of the stuff. You hadn't done your work unless you'd got rid of those issues. And that's not my view at all. I don't believe in getting rid of stuff. And the cool thing about having a relational model is it shifts you from that sort of trying to get rid of stuff and kill stuff to shifting your relationship to the stuff of life. Now, this is huge. I don't know if you've ever done that where you tried to kill your ego. How did that go? Good luck with that, right? The thing is, if you try and eradicate some aspect of yourself, and I mentioned in I think both of the last episodes that really it's about wholeness. It's about embracing the whole of us, the dark and the light. But if you go trying to kill all the darkness, you set yourself up for a lot of pressure and a lot of failure. Because I don't know if you've noticed, but the stuff just kind of comes back. Or at least it seems to come back. It can come back in a more evolved way. But if you've got this idea that you have to rid yourself of something, it's that very black and white, sort of experience that you have. It becomes very polarized, and the stuff, it's like the stuff, your ego, what do you want to call that, is it kind of has a life of its own, and everything wants to live, right? So it fights back. It fights for its survival. So again, pressure, failure, and you can find that doing that inner work becomes a grind, and that's not what I want for you. It's like I believe that living a life where you're really experiencing growth and transformation. It is an ongoing thing, but that doesn't have to make it a grind. If you look at it in terms of relationship, it's your relationship to the stuff, then that relational view instantly releases the pressure. So you don't get that life or death, win-lose mindset, and you get more of a, automatically you get kind of this deeply cooperational perspective with your stuff. So there's kind of a natural softening to the process of change and transformation, sort of an opening to that process of change. And you're just in a much more effective state. And wait for it can be more fun. It can be fun. I find myself laughing a lot with my clients. It's not that I'm necessarily, I'm definitely not laughing at them or their situation, but, life, growth, transformation, you can have a smile at it. And having that relational view really, really gives you the opportunity to approach it in a way which can be ongoing, mutually beneficial to you and the stuff. You're much more effective at doing it. So it is a really, really cool thing. At least that's my perspective. Also, if we look at things relationally, in practical terms, that means interactive. So it's the realm of communication, which is why I'm talking about this, 3 types of interaction today. And now the thing about communication skills and the dynamics of relationship is generally we've been raised not taught so well, or we've got hand-me-down really sucky relationship models. So a lot of my focus is on improving our relating, because that works, we'll cover the different areas, but it works outside, inside, in all areas of life. If you can really improve how you relate, then you're actually upgrading your operating system relative to your entire life. So, and I'm hugely passionate about this. It's why I love that a huge part of what I do is sharing MPA and non-personal awareness, because it is relational to its core. But also the other things that I use, the aspects that I love, and in what I share, I really love to help people to sort of upgrade their relating skills. And again, it's not perfect. Doesn't mean you will have a perfect relationship romantically for the rest of your life, because that's not how it is. But your relationship to the stuff of life can change dramatically. And of course, it can help those kind of relationships as well. And also when it comes to sort of communication, you use the word communication or relating, and often people think it's just about talking. But really, for me, it's about the energy that you come from. Yes, the words are important. It's always, words are powerful. It's the words you use do have an impact. But fundamentally, again, MPA being a relational model, but also a model about the energy that's behind things, then the energy you come from is really important. So it goes beyond just words. There's words, body language, energy you are, where you're coming from inside. And also the other thing that I mentioned in the title is mastery. Again, mastery is a big part of what I love to talk about. Mastery doesn't mean complete and perfection. It just means that you've practiced something enough that you can get really, really good at it. And certain things that you may have to think about in the beginning start to become automatic. So it can sort of, for me, mastery means that you've really embedded something and threaded it through your being, through your consciousness, so you can practice it artfully in the world. And again, it's never going to be done. I think about it in terms of, if you think about an Olympic athlete, for example, maybe a pole vaulter or something, and at that level of mastery, they're not necessarily gaining much. It might be sort of a tiny fraction of an inch, but they're so sensitive to the nuances of what it takes to make that difference. So in their world, their sense of change, while it may seem small from the ground or from a starter point of view, each tiny bit is huge, and it does make the difference between, to use that sort of competitive Olympic model, just between a gold medal or no place or whatever it is. And certainly in terms of their own sense of achievement, those little things, those subtle changes, when you get to a level of mastery, you become acutely aware of the subtleties of whatever it is that you're mastering, and that can make all the difference. So we'll be talking about 3 key areas of mastery when it comes to being authentically human and brilliant, which is what we're all about here. And, coming back full circle, I started talking about authenticity and about kind of dropping the masks or holding your masks lightly. So you probably twigged here that, or put 2 and 2 together, and can see that you can usually communicate or interact more clearly, or you could say the best relational interactions come when we kind of drop our masks or let them go. You can be real with each other. I mean, I found when MPA first sort of popped out of me back in 2007, one of the things I noticed in the 18 months that I sort of practiced with it and worked with it before I started sharing it and teaching it, I found that I was able to be sort of more instantly intimate with people, because I became so much less invested in this sort of idea of who I was supposed to be, or even who I am, and I was much more available to that interaction. So you do find, or I've found certainly, that as you're able to sort of hold your identities lightly, then you're much more available to interact and get that kind of intimacy with people. And I'm not talking about sex here, guys. I mean, yes, in that situation, it's great. I'm talking about just the intimacy of really being human together. Okay, so again, just before we dive into the sort of really get into what are the 3 types of interaction, just to remind you that when it comes to non-personal awareness, the best place to start is with the MPA process, and you can get that for free if you go to npa4.me/MPA sheet and have a play with that. All right, so this is turning into a bit of an epic episode. If you listened last week, I was kind of panicking. I was recording, and I'd read on the system that you can only record half an hour at a time. And I thought, actually, half an hour is a pretty good length for an episode. But I figured out how to go longer, because we're already past the half-hour mark by a considerable amount. So generally, I'll try and keep the episodes to half an hour. But let's recap and round this one up. It has been a foundational episode, so I really wanted to cover these parts. It's one you can come back to, I hope, and have found really useful. So let's recap. What are the 3 types? Well, there's human interactions, which is you and other people. And that includes, by the way, through social media and all sorts of things, but certainly human to human. There's internal interactions, which is, again, more that kind of the self-dialogue in various forms. And then there's the intuitive or instinctive interaction, which is that deep connection with the part of you that is in resonance with the bigger picture of the universe. And each of these have these different components. There's the sharing, so that's expressing yourself, where I suggest warmth and clarity are really good key things to look at. There's the listening, the feedback, the receiving, or again, empathy and sort of that sense of, I guess, trust and compassion and congruency is really good. Well, congruency really is in the 3rd bit, which is action. So that's follow through and congruency. So again, this also works. We didn't really cover it distinctly with the intuitive faculty, but it really is the case. Again, sharing, how does that work with intuitive faculties? Well, that's really saying if you put an intention out, generally your intuition will respond to your intentions. I'd like to know what's best here. Okay, that's sharing, expressing where you are. Then it's going to receiving mode, really listening and being available without an agenda, as I mentioned, and then taking action on it. The more you are congruent and act on your instinct and your intuition, the louder it will become, the clearer it will be. You get to mastery, where it becomes very automatic, and you start living a life where you're really in harmony and in alignment with that aspect of yourself, which is a truly powerful thing. Now, to finish up, I'm going to come back to the start. Remember, I talked about how really I look at things as a relationship model. When you think about these things and these parts of you and these interactions in a relational way, you can understand that in a relationship, it's best if you nurture it by building trust and openness and availability. It's sort of in all 3 aspects of this, and in life in general. a relational view really inspires a cooperative and nurturing way forward. And that, my friends, is the way of the human going forward if we want to survive as a species. I think it's already happening on a ground level, and it's rocking the upstairs world. Upstairs meaning the powers that be, but certainly on a very personal or in sort of on a very human level, coming into that sort of nurturing relational model is a powerful thing. And I want you to think of these three parts, the human, the internal, and the intuitive, as three cogs in a system. So each one will have different issues, if you like, that you have, different places where it could do with work. But the more you tune up each of the cogs, the more distinct those teeth of the cogs are. And then as you think of them as three cogs in a system, the way cogs works is the teeth interact. So the clearer and more pristine each one is, the more they can interact. And when the reason we have cogs that interact is because that creates leverage. You move one, the rest move. So and again, this is actually, I realize as I'm speaking this out, one of the other fundamental ways that I see life is the parts of our life are like cogs. And if you line them up, rather than having them as independent things where they're just spinning around doing nothing, when you bring them together as a system, you can really begin to move things in your world. So lining up those three cogs, thinking of it as a system, you can really start to leverage the whole interactive aspect of you individually, and then your brilliance can shine. And yeah, just wrapping up then, just again to say what I've said, really covering these aspects, they'll kind of come up throughout all the episodes that I do. The themes will come up again and again. But for right now, it's my hope, as is always the case, that the perspective I'm offering here somehow opens a door in you, perhaps a new perspective. And I'm a great believer in the power of perspective. A new perspective in itself can make a difference, and I hope that's the case. And at least get you thinking about some of the key interactions of your life. And again, I actually don't know a better tool for, I would say, surreptitiously putting all the elements in place for that sort of powerful, effective interactional and relational life. I don't know a better way than MPA. I will say, as I always say, MPA is a way, not the way. There are, I'm sure, lots of levels, but I know from my own experience and the thousands and thousands of people around the world that really sort of take MPA into their lives in a wholehearted way, they start to just do this automatically because it does allow you to hold your identities lightly. It does train you to drop your agenda. It does open you into that sense of the availability, which brings intimacy and connection, both with yourself. It really gets you out of your own way when it comes to intuition. So it's very, very powerful. And as I said earlier, best way to start if you're new to MPA. I mean, if you're not new to MPA, you've got the sheet and you want to find out more. Again, I would encourage you to do the trainings that we've got available. But if you're new to it or haven't yet done it, then just go to the website. So it's mpa4.me/MPA sheet to get you straight to the page where you can give me your email and I'll send you the free sheet. Or if it's simpler, just go to joelyoungmpa.com. And you'll find on that front page there's a button you can click to get you to that same page. Again, MPA, November, Papa, Alpha. I looked that up. I always say Nicola, Peter, Annie. I thought I better look up what it really is. November, Papa, Alpha. So I'll keep to that. And then finally, if you feel like you'd like to work with me one-to-one, that is available. I do have some spaces available right now as I record this. Again, you can go to joelyoungmpa.com/sessions or just go to joelyoungmpa.com and find the sessions tab. And you can find out about working with me sort of one-on-one. So do subscribe, please. I'd love you to subscribe. I would feel warm and cozy inside. Do leave a review. As I say, a wonderful, be real, be honest, but I do love a 5-star review. A, it will make my day. B, it will help other people know that it's worth spending some minutes with me. And I hope that this will spread and my message and my sharings, my ponderings will help more and more people. And do message me. I'd love to hear your messages. Again, you can go to anchor.fm/joelyoungmpa/message or just go to the to my Anchor page, anchor.fm/JollyMPA. God, there's a lot of URLs today, aren't there? And leave me that message if you've got a question, if you've got feedback, if you'd like me to cover something, whatever you want to say. I'd love to hear from you. And as promised, I'm going to leave you with the song that is the background to the intro, the whole song. So stick around after the moo if you want to hear that full song, which is called Simple. And I will see you next week. Thanks so much for being here.
Looking to the future, I see a simpler life. That's the secret, you know, the secret to a happy life. No matter what you're facing, however complicated it may seem, remember, the answer is always simple. The secret, you know, the secret to a happy life. No matter what you're facing, remember, the answer is always simple.
Life is very simple. Love is all you need.
Remember,
life is very simple.
The answer is always simple.
Life is very simple. Love is all you need. Life is very simple. Love is all you need. Life is very simple. Love is all you need. Life is very simple. Love is all you need. Life is very simple. Love is all you need. Life is very simple. Love is all you need.
Looking to the future, I